Ladies and gentlemen, there are certain franchises that, as they develop in Hollywood, you begin to sit back a little bit and say, "Ah, not another one of these." Fast and Furious is a great example. I think they're coming up on number 11 or so in that series. And maybe after four, they did a neat little trick by bringing in guest stars, as you will, guest villains, if you will. It's the type of thing that Sly Stallone did with his Expendables movies. But Fast and Furious has gone on way too long, and it serves now as being the only thing that Vin Diesel can do outside of voicing Groot that gets him any money in Hollywood because he just can't thrive in any other type of film. Well, same thing could be said for the Planet of the Apes. How many more ape movies do you want? And I must admit, when they had the press screening here in our hometown of Pittsburgh, I entered with much trepidation because let's face it, all of these ape movies were pretty much the same. So in this one, I was pleasantly surprised. As cinematic class is about to begin and your professor is in.
What did I miss?
She spoke. She called my name.
You misheard.
You said this Nova was smarter than most.
Within reason. Some intelligence, to be sure.
I have a name. May. I know where they're taking your clan.
Greetings, salutations, and other sundry affairs. I am your cinematic professor and purveyor of truth in movies. And the truth about this movie is that it breaks from the norm, and I think that's what sets it aside as a more enjoyable tale. Look, folks, let's not sugarcoat this in any way possible. You can look back all the way to the original 1968 Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston, the one that Rod Serling penned. And you could say that, uh, just like the condescending critics in the Two Lettered Cities said, that this is basically a racist type movie in that there were a lot of race analogies drawn into the humans versus the apes. Well, if you follow that argument, you can go all the way back to 1933 when they released King Kong originally and see what some of the critics were saying about that movie back then. You got to admit that after you watched a lot of these movies, that theme came through and it was like getting hit with a sledgehammer and you were just tired of it. The analogies were just wearing thin. So, with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, they take off on a whole new adventure, and that makes it worthwhile. Now, they did a trilogy detailing Caesar and his rise to power and his desire to, make the apes a viable entity in the world and all that wonderful stuff. Okay. This movie actually takes place about 400 years after the death of Caesar. And we see a whole world in which things are different all the way around. And yeah, there's always going to be a conflict between ape and humans, but that's not center for this story. This story talks about something that actually comes out of today's headlines in how the legend of Caesar and the history behind the Planet of the Apes has been distorted to allow certain factions of apes to come into, for lack of a better term, political power and then seize that power. Like people who want to destroy monuments, rewrite history. You kind of get what I'm getting at.
The Apes.
What Andy Serkis did was just amazing.
Caesar!
He brought a digital character to life. With Kingdom, we get to contribute to this great legacy. We wanted to give people this immersive experience into a world we've never seen before.
Wes did something new, and I was really excited to pass on the baton.
The fans of the previous trilogy will appreciate that we took this leap forward to do our own thing, but still honor what came before.
Okay, to kind of emphasize the point that, the race issue isn't really that big in this movie, let's turn to Proximus Caesar. He is the antagonist, if you will, the heavy in this movie, and he's played with an awful lot of fun by Kevin Durant. It's a nice role for him. He does really, really well in this. This may be his best role since he was the rat catcher all the way back in the TV series The Strain. This one's an awful lot of fun. And when you talk to Durant about how he approached Proximus Caesar, he'll tell you that there's not a hatred there between ape and human as there always permeates the other movies. In this one, Caesar actually admires what the humans have done and he wants to emulate it for the apes.
And I think in the midst of it, while he's trying to create this future for apes, there's a real adoration for humans as well, because he's like, look at how they dominated for so long, he's learning about the history of Homo sapiens going back to when there were 7 different species of humans. This stuff isn't in the script, this is just me. Why did Homo sapiens come out on top? And why and how did they rule for so long? How did they evolve so quickly and achieve everything that they did through the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, all the technology that they created, especially in the last century. He's incredibly inspired by that. So he does have a love for it. I wouldn't be surprised if he's off working with paints too, and trying to figure out how to be as elevated as possible.
What a wonderful day!
What a wonderful day!
Are we thankful for the words of Caesar?
We are thankful.
Do we bend our heads?
We bend.
Say his words. Say his words! What a wonderful day!
So let me tell you some of the other people in this. Owen Teague plays Noah. I guess he's our protagonist. He's kind of like the lead ape, even though he's kind of a young kid, a young punk in the ape world. Peter Macon is in this. He plays Raka. He's a nice little character in this kind of a, well, if you will, he's a temporary Yoda for Noah. Okay, and that's kind of interesting. And Freya Allen is in this. Most of you will remember Freya when she had blonde hair, and she was in the Witcher series along with Henry Cavill. She's back to being a brunette in this one. And you know, I rail an awful lot about these very demure women, and suddenly there are these big warriors who can handle all this kind of stuff. And naturally on the circuit, uh, Freya had to boast, if you will, about how she does all her own stunts.
I'm very overprotective about I always say it feels like my character's cheating on me when someone else is, I mean, I understand when someone else is you know, doing things for me. I understand though, times it has to be done, but like, yeah, in general I like to be able to kind of do everything. I just think every aspect of a role, like all the physical stuff, the stunt stuff, it's all like every part of it is you putting something into May, and also getting something back from that, you know, stunt or that, yeah, you know, in terms of like it helps you kind of have a sense of what she's kind of going through doing it yourself. And also I just find it fun. Like I like the challenges, and yeah, I like to be challenged. I like the kind of adrenaline of doing anything like that, and being able to like get a shot done when it's like a stunt is kind of satisfying, and to see it at the end.
You know, this is the same kind of almost rote PR hype that we hear from any woman who goes into an action type role. So this time we decided to, as Reagan said, trust but verify, instead of going like so many of the bobblehead Hollywood reporters and bobble off. So we went and talked with Glenn Sutter. Who is Glenn Sutter? He's the guy that did all the stunts. Say, yo, Glenn, did Freya actually do all these stunts? Or is she just pulling our chain here?
There was many times that Freya was being chased by a horse, and in one of our sequences, a net was thrown, two horses threw a net over a group of ferals, which May was captured within the net, and she was able to escape while the other humans were dragged away. But on that, I've got to say, Freya is probably one of the most beautiful runners you'd ever see. Like, her physicality for running is just fantastic. There's no doubt about it. And she was, from our first conversation when we first met, it was very clear that she wanted to do as much of her action as possible. And I hear that all the time, but she genuinely is an athlete. And Freya's super keen to be involved, and she's very capable.
All right, let me give you some of the other people here behind the camera for this one. Wes Ball is back again as director, and with the previous 8 movies that he's done, he's called on his good buddy Eula Peros to be cinematographer. These guys have worked together on several occasions, and so has editor Dan Zimmerman, and he does an okay job in editing this. Let me kind of put a caveat on that, and I'll tell you that this story was written by Josh Friedman. So you have that. The whole movie was shot pretty much on location in New South Wales and Australia, and it had a different name overseas. Now, here it's called Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. That's awkward, very awkward. But overseas, it's called Planet of the Apes Ride. I don't get that one either. I'm sure they're going to come up with a much better title. But this way, you know, in case you're doing a traveling across the pond, as they say, you'll know that it's one and the same movie and not something different in there. I told you I wanted to talk about the editor, Dan Zimmerman, on this one. Boy, this movie is slow in the beginning. Oh, my God. You know, the movie clocks in at 2.5 hours. Folks, 45 minutes of this movie could have been trimmed without losing anything. And, it seems that their goal is just to try to make these movies longer and longer. And there's no need. It takes a while to set up, and you begin to fidget and you begin to squirm a little bit in your seat, and that's never a good thing. Remember, the ideal movie is 90 minutes long, and I can see this one maybe going 10 minutes over, but no longer than that did it have to be, and yet this thing goes on. Now, having said that, once it warms up and you get through the initial, say, 40 minutes or so, then the movie starts to pick up and you get to have some very nice action sequences that string along and move the plot along. And these work. They're nice little action sequences mixed with some humorous anecdotes, and they all work together. So after we get through the first 40 minutes or so, Dan and company do a fairly good job of putting this thing together. And one of the main reasons is, even though most of this stuff is CGI, it looks fairly spectacular. In fact, we talked with Eric Winquest. He is the head of Weta FX. They've been doing an awful lot of special effects for the big budget movies in Hollywood recently. And so when you come to a movie like this that has literally a plethora of action special effects scenes, which ones would you pick as being the most challenging?
There are a number of nail biters in this movie, but I think probably among the top of them is the water work that we're going to be into, right? So we've got one sequence that takes place in and around a river. We've got another sequence that involves a large flood, and in both cases, that's asking us to have to now not just simulate complex water simulations, but also introduce apes into the mix. And now we're talking about wet apes, which we've seen a shot or two in the previous films, but that's really challenging work. We've got a very demanding scenes because both of these cases are taking place in broad daylight. There's no hiding things at nighttime or anything kind of like that. We've also got a very challenging sequence that takes place around a human hunt in tall grass, which is a throwback to the '68 Charlton Heston film, right? And that scene is going to be quite complex in the sense that we've got a lot of our feral humans running around, splashing through the river, but they're being chased by marauding apes who aren't there on horses with CG zebras. It's just like a really kind of chaotic sequence that we've got our photography with our stunt players running around in their feral human costumes, splashing through the river. But now we're going to have to work all of our apes in amongst all that splashing into the tall grass and working through that.
So at this time, I think it's time for us to journey, to peel back the veils of time and go back to the early Cretaceous period to check in with the nation's first and only prehistoric film critic, Rex.
Of the planet of the apes is a tale of a political, military complex versus the common man. Okay. It's all enveloped by silly apes, nevertheless. The ape actors, though, are actually better than the human actors. The movie is fun, but too long. It will provide a bad taste for
Here we go. Myself as a fan, I'm very, very thrilled at the opportunity to contribute to this great legacy of these movies.
All right, here we go. Pictures up.
Whereas the last three movies were about Caesar and his struggle. Here, our movie, you cut 300-400 years after. And you see what has become of the apes, what's become of his legacy,
Caesar!
what's become of the humans, and the world.
What a wonderful day!
It's such a cool continuation of this world. We find a new protagonist called Noah.
For
the humans. Life as we knew it has kind of gone, and the apes hunt down the humans. But Noah sees something special in my character.
Why do they hunt this human?
He is smarter than most.
We've worked really hard to achieve a much bigger scale.
I mean, it's jaw-dropping. And what Wes has set up here is a fascinating idea.
You are familiar with the concept of evolution?
Ultimately, our movie is really about, can apes and humans live together?
You would choose a human over an ape. Together, you will die.
No. Together. Strong.
So there you have it from Rex. And in summation, this is not a bad movie. This is not bad at all. In fact, I got to tell you, I enjoyed sitting through this more than I did Dune Part 2. So that might put it into some perspective for you. It's a struggle to get through that first 40 minutes. Trust me when I tell you, it is. And if you make it through that, then this is pretty good. It appears to be the start of a brand new trilogy in the Ape saga. And this story, if Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is any indication, might be a little easier to savor simply because you're not getting hit with all that heavy implied racism thing going on there. There's a whole new venue here as far as the story is concerned. Yes, social commentary, but at least it's not, like the TV commercials you've been watching lately. So, you're spared that and being clubbed over the head repeatedly with that kind of stuff. And they actually have a different type of storyline where you have these rather unique characters involved in what's going on. And that certainly has potential. They do need to make sure they get these movies down to a reasonable length and quit dragging them out so damn much. Hey, if you like this interview and you like more of my interviews, then don't forget to click that subscribe button up there in the corner, and that will, it's free. Oh yeah. And that will immediately alert you every time I do a brand new review or post a brand new show. And these reviews are going to be looking pretty snazzy in the weeks to come. We got some new equipment coming in, and hopefully they'll add a little zing and pizzazz to what we're doing here with the film reviews. Also, I want to tell you that Rex has his very own store, courtesy of Redbubble. And let me plug up the URL for you here. There are a myriad of items in the store that are worthwhile, especially now that you have graduations coming up. You're looking for Father's Day gifts coming up, and just summertime fun. So things like tote bags, and beach hats, and ball caps, t-shirts, all that good kind of stuff. And a variety of colors and styles. And you'll be able to get them at the official Rex Real store through redbubble.com. Okay, I think we've taken care of all the business. So I will say that now that you have learned what you have learned, you're ready.